Thank you, Julie, and thank you, RRSM, for giving us the opportunity to host this webinar today and introduce this subject. Using data, technology and data to predict injuries in the non-office workspace. It's kind of a bit of a long-winded way of talking about industrial spaces, but that's the way we pitched it. Over the course of the next hour or so, we're going to try and give you a flavour of how technologies and more importantly the data that those technologies can deliver can really assist you managing and mitigating the manual handling and musculoskeletal injuries and risks that occur in the industrial space. As Julie said, I'm Andy Hawkes, CEO of Cardinus, and we've been working with Mark Haseman and Longitude 6, who are an Australian-based organisation for the last 3 or 4 years in looking at how technology and data can have this impact in the manual handling arena. The important thing to get across, and Mark will probably reaffirm this, is that Longitude 6 themselves are not a technology company. They are an organisation that looks at all the best technologies around the world, have looked at that best of breed and how they can bring different technologies, solutions in this space together to really analyse and make sure that data is delivering the solutions that organisations and more importantly the workers suffering from manual handling and musculoskeletal injuries need. So I'll be handing over to Mark shortly. Just as a bit of backdrop, and I'm sure we've got many health and safety specialists on this webinar, but the stats are there. There's a huge number of manual handling related issues, and whichever way you look at it, whether it be from the employer's liability claim side, the cost side of the equation, you know, a third of all employers' liability claims, according to Waitman's, are manual handling related. You know, in 2020, the most prevalent cause of injuries are either slip, trips, falls, overexertion, or back injuries. So manual handling is a big issue. I'm sure you know that. They just reinforce the fact this is costing money, it's injuring the workforce, it's causing presenteeism, it's causing absenteeism. And when you bring that down to the types of manual handling, there are seriously, every part of the human anatomy can be impacted by this, and they can be catastrophic. You know, we can kill people through manual handling, and we can create those chronic long-term issues through manual handling. So it impacts that presenteeism, absenteeism issue, but it can just cost you money. But again, it comes back to it's causing pain and discomfort and potential death to our workforce and the people that we work with. Traditionally, the world has been expensive and on-site. Experts may go on site, they may be competent people going on site doing classic manual handling risk assessments, whether they're using the HSE MAC tool, Riva Ruler, they're measuring people, they're using rulers and bits and pieces, they're taking the tile process, but all of those tend to lack real live data and real validation, and there's a high degree of subjectivity as well. And what we're trying to do in this world is start to look at the technologies that have emerged over the last 5-10 years, and certainly have accelerated in the last 2 or 3 years. And there's a lot of that technology out there. Mark will talk about this in more detail. We have sensors, things that we stick on the body. We can use now motion capture, the sort of CGI technologies from the film industry that came out of sports that have moved into the manual handling arena. There's some great motion capture technologies. There's some great wearables. We're now starting to see the emergence of AI taking over your CCTV in your factories and warehouses and analysing what's going on. And then we have the emergence of exoskeletons as well. All of those can deliver high quality validated data. And probably more importantly, you can start to then look at the person and the job that those individuals are doing long before the injury may occur. We can start to actually predict that this individual could be impacted by doing that job in that particular way. Mark will spend a bit of time on that. It allows it enables automation of the tedious assessments, allows experts then to focus on delivering the interventions that are required rather than spending that time just producing the assessments. It ensures consistent and congruent data. So you're getting the same process of data, you're not getting that subjectivity, and it will start to allow a scalable and lower cost solution as we go forward. So that's just a bit of background in terms of introducing Mark. So Mark, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Andy. So what I'll just talk quickly about what I'm going to work through. Sorry, could you go back one, Andy? There you go. So what I want to do is we'll talk a little bit about a number of technologies that Cardinus and Longitude use together for our blend of clients. We have quite a diverse client base. I think it's really important to say that not one element of technology seems to satisfy necessarily any client, but particularly all clients. And I think the thing that we're doing well with Cardinus is we're blending technologies and their outputs, as I put in there, in harmony to create information, which is all we're talking about, information for professional people to use. Through this presentation, I want to talk a little bit about how we measure jobs and what the jobs demand of our people in the movement sense. There's also an opportunity to use technology to understand what a human being is able to do. Our workforces, as they're aging in remote locations, how we understand what they're able to do becomes very important if we're trying to align them to their job safely and efficiently. And therefore, you could also start to look at pre-employment, fitness for work, how productive people are, and how you can engage with people through communications and also the results that you're helping them with. So that's what we'll try and explain in this next little period with this presentation. So we'll go, Andy. Thank you. So the first technology we want to just talk to a little bit is wearable sensor technology. There are a lot of those around. There's a lot of singular sensor technologies. They all do very good jobs. They are good alert tools. They help inform a worker or an organization of what their people are doing within a framework of what they should be doing. There are technologies, and we're very excited about the ones that we're using, but there's a technology that Cardinus use with us that really analyzes the demands of a job and creates a scoring output. But the beauty of that is that we're able to align what created that score or that risk back to the human movement required to do the job. So if you think of those words carefully, when understanding that it's not just movement, but it's a consequence of that movement and what that could cause the person if something goes wrong. Measuring movement alone is never going to give you a risk score. It only gives you a movement score that aligns to some KPI or some measure. So using sensors, if you have one sensor, it's very difficult to measure the whole body. There's a lot of assumptions and a lot of subjectivity to that process. If you use multiple sensors, the issue you might have is that it's expensive, or could be, and also do they work in harmony with each other. So wearable sensors to measure the job and the demands. Thanks, Andy. The beauty of that is that you can start to understand, and this slide's a really nice representation of what we do. So what we do is that we'll look and assess a job task. We won't look at the whole job, we'll look at the breakdown of the job. And we'll say a certain job, like a warehouse worker is a job, but part of that job is to do forklift driving or shrink wrapping or something of that nature. We can look at the demands of that job. So you can see under the column contributing factors, there's just a couple of headline ones there, but the data has a serious amount of output, but we're just showing that high level here for you. We then apply the logic of a hierarchy of control to how do we eliminate the risk or reduce the risk of that job by applying certain interventions, either engineering, administrative, substitution, or elimination. We can then predetermine what the risk could be, and that's powerful. If you think of an organization, when you're doing multiple assessments in a day, you could do 10, 15, 20 job tasks in a day. You could actually work out where you could reduce those risks. And using technology does give you the ability to do 15 or 20 analysis a day as opposed to 2 or 3. Thanks, Andy. Then the other factor in this whole story is our people. So to be able to measure people quickly, remotely, and with objectivity becomes a really powerful opportunity to say our workforce have certain physical capabilities, and then we start to align them to the demands of the job, as I've just shown in the previous technology. Some critical factors, though, are always the cost, but are the scoring accurate? Is it relevant to the workplace, or is it a product that has gone out from another environment, like a clinical environment or a sport environment, and we're trying to morph it into? So the ability of finding data that is actually relevant to the workplace and to the worker that is easy to do is really important. And also, do you need to get people into a clinical environment or a workplace to assess them, or can you assess them remotely, as in send them a link so they can assess themselves? So these are the exciting possibilities. If we go to the next one, Andy. Thank you. For argument's sake, we might be able to assess a person in 10 or 15 minutes and come back with very clear understanding of their functional capability around mobility, stability, they're around different algorithms and measurement codes that talk about whether a person is able to move, and if not, what degree of impairment do they suffer? And then we can start looking at the job they do. And again, if you can just pre-imagine this information, aligning it back to the job, where you can go with that. Again, it's just information, it's what you want to do with it. The next one. AI. A lot of products out there will mention the 2 letters AI. AI is a really interesting phenomenon at the moment, but there are products out there that will very accurately look at something very quickly as an image and provide information like the force and torque of a job task, the wrist movement, the leg movement. It can help design solutions. It can even work in remote locations. It can even provide ruler and Reba analysis at the same time as doing job task analysis. And the beautiful piece of some of these technologies is that you need to have any skill to use them. You don't need to be an ergonomist. You don't need to be a clinician. You can actually use a team member to do the assessment. It's someone with the skill to look at the data that will create the output. Thanks, Andy. And as a bit of a summary on what I've just explained, all of what I've explained about measuring people and measuring jobs using technology gives you an amazing capacity to focus in on different elements of what we like to call the ecosystem of where people can be hurt or removed from being hurt in your environment. The work we do and Cardenas do is we may get drawn into the pre-employment space. We may get drawn into how to bring people into their organization. So you're bringing in people in their 50s and 60s, or you have people that are in that age group. How do you make sure that they are doing the job safely for themselves and efficiently? in the operations, there's so many elements there. Process change, job equipment change, engineering changes, job rotation, shift rotation, all of that together with early intervention or rehabilitation and tracking, and then bringing people back to work. We would suggest that you can use technologies in all of those elements to measure people, jobs, and output, and then make decisions about what to do in that analysis piece in the middle. And that's what we do. Cardinus and Longitude do a lot of work on how to match people to their jobs dependent on which element we're talking about, injured, while they're doing their work, or before you even employed them. So as a bit of a summary, it gives you an amazing ability to create training products, measure change, assist people in how to get fitter for their work and maintain their employment. And you can always, because you're capturing data, you can revisit and reanalyze whether you've improved or not improved. And my summary is that technology alone will not do this. One piece of technology will not make a substantive change on its own. It will help, but it won't make it. It's the aggregation of different technologies and the information back into your environment that's relative to you. I think too often I find, and we see companies using a piece of technology the way it was designed, but it's not relevant to them, so they don't use it very long. And quite a lot of people cancel or stop using their technologies, and that has the obvious effect of money, effort, and time and motivation as a negative. It is really important that it's relevant to you, which is what we think can make the massive difference. Andy? You're on mute too, by the way.
There we are. Sorry. I'm back in the room. Yep. Mark.
Yep.
Before we sort of move on a little bit, is it worth just talking a bit about a typical project that you've experienced where you've gone into an organization and in using these different technologies, you know, the sort of results that you can get from this by really being analytical in the approach?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. I guess a nice use case would be that it's not unusual to go to a company that's already had a job task library done, or actually had analysis done over the years of jobs in the hope of finding a way to rectify the risks. Excuse me. A typical assignment for us initially could be that we engage for 1 to 3 days, very often not much more than that. And we will go in and look at a range of job tasks using 1 or 2 of the technologies, and then we'll actually do some measurement on some of the people. And then over the 1 or 2, so we could do 20 job tasks in a day and 10 or 15 people in a day. From that, we can actually start to then map people to their jobs and start to design potential solutions. So that would be a typical initial engagement before clients decide whether to make change to their business, even buy technology, or engage us to help on an ongoing basis. And that would be a typical early sort of play by many companies.
Thanks, Mark. I mean, I know over the course of some of the projects that we've been involved in, you know, the sort of benefits that are emerging, I've put, you know, we've seen up to 68% reduction in the leading indicators and some significant change. I'm not saying that you wouldn't have got those through the traditional process. I think what we've seen is a much more efficient process, and looking at an organisation in more holistic, you know, one organisation we've worked with, won't mention the names, but you know, we've done sort of 60 job tasks, 40 functions over that 3 or 4 day, I think 4 day project, relatively low cost but high efficiency. and significant reduction in the early indications from the traditional process. So the benefits, Mark, obviously reduction in injuries results in reduction in presenteeism, absenteeism, costs, and all the things that we want, making our workers safer, less painful. The speed of the process, I think that's one of the things that we've seen working with you, that you can deliver a project in a relatively, this is not a hugely expensive process, and can deliver a huge amount of data in a relatively short framework. In terms of that removal of subjectivity, any thoughts about how the validation of this data?
Yeah, just on that, and it's a really powerful point. To be able to measure a worker doing something, so you might have a job task that's done by someone who's tall, someone who's not tall, or you may have trained someone to do something specifically. To be able to capture that in data and imagery, and then to be able to recall that for the purpose of training or education or validation, becomes very, like any data, it's really powerful and important. It also gives you the ability to validate why you would want to spend money on changing processes or buying equipment, because you can actually apply the algorithms and outputs to the estimated change, as in a return on investment. And then when you do make the change, it's easy to go back and retest and say, have we hit that mark, or do we need to go again, or how can we do it? No different to the traditional method in the sense of the logic of it, but the data changes the subjectivity significantly. So,
and in terms of the need still for expertise, I think one of the points you raise, and we've seen, is that you don't need the expert to do the assessments. What you need is the expert to deliver or understand the data or the data, as you call it over there. And then it's how can you have that expertise focused on the intervention, whatever is required to mitigate that pain, discomfort issue. How do you see the technologies and data working with those experts?
It's a good point in the sense that sometimes you'll have expert people who are a bit negative to the technology because either it impedes on they have a sense that it may impede on their ability to use their skill, or replace them or something a little bit like that. But in reality, most professional experts would use this data exceptionally well and really efficiently. What is also exciting though, and we've got a number of clients, particularly in the US, with Cardinus again, and in our own world, that do not have those experts. And if we know that, we can actually tailor the outputs to support companies that don't have the experts around to make significant change that is validated and demonstrated through the data without it requiring an expert. But again, some companies have the experts around, so it just goes to another level. So it's again making it tailored to the client's capability, operationally, budget. If they don't have the money to make big changes, they're not going to make big changes. So that becomes really important. But you can do all of that with this process. So.
And with this sort of the variety of technologies, where do you see this whole sort of market going in terms of the future of these technologies?
So I think it's like everything that we all enjoy, our phones and our watches and our microwave ovens or whatever it is we've got in our life that has technology around it. It's moving quickly. I think the bit that for me, I really enjoy finding a provider or a developer that is open to improving based on client feedback. So we enjoy taking our clients' feedback back to some of our suppliers. But I also think, what was really sort of leading edge 3 years ago is to a point now nearly redundant. So there's a lesson there to be learned in what you commit to and how you commit to it. and then what support comes with that technology purchase. And I think the support is everything. If you don't have that right support that's relevant to you, you may not enjoy the technology acquisition as much as you'd hoped. AI, wearable sensors, and camera technology are all very, very powerful now. You'd assume that AI, like everything else in the world, is going to become the predominant technology in a number of years' time.
Thank you, Mark. I think the certainly what we're starting to see from working with you through clients is they're starting to see, one, the reduction in injury in a rapid format, but they're starting to be able to change their ways of working without having to spend that time that they previously would or have to find the experts. We've got one organization where they're using the camera technology, the motion capture, and within a rapid period of time, they're starting to make changes and improving the lives of their workforce.
Sorry, Andy, if I can just elaborate on that a little bit too. Companies that have multiple sites, what we are noticing, and that's with Cardinus, we've got a couple of clients that are really, and one in Australia as well, where they have multiple locations. To be able to put technology into those multiple locations and train people within the business to be the champion of that technology and its outputs, you're creating, in a way, ergo champions, and they don't need to be highly skilled ergonomists because they're learning how to use the data and the technology, but you're able to scale a singular approach to what you're doing across multiple locations geographically and even culturally. And I think that's becoming the really evident positive output as well. So thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Mark. So just to, in sort of before we get into some Q&A, one of the points that we wanted to get across today is that there are some amazing technologies. They're changing, they're emerging. There's new stuff coming through every day. Literally every day, we're getting calls from people saying we've got a new camera, we've got a new sensor, and we don't see this as being a single technology, as Mark has highlighted. We see this working in the industrial space. We're starting to see also some solutions in the office space, the hybrid working space, and so on. If anyone's interested, we can offer demos, short-term, long-term, short-term, low-cost pilots. There's lots of ways to look at this, so please do contact us. We've got plenty of time for questions, and Mark is a real expert in this. So if people have got questions, now's the time to ask Mark.
Yes, we do have some questions that have come through, and I will put them to you now. So the first one is, this all looks very exciting, but also very expensive. How can a company trial these technologies and the support you mentioned before committing too heavily?
Yeah, so to assume they're expensive is probably a reasonable thought, but I think what we've done, Cardinus have been amazing in being able to help create different purchasing or short-term loan models. So we're able to really provide a client access to a technology over 1 or 2 days, and where they do everything themselves. We educate them in a very quick, short online training program, and they will be able to analyze their jobs. So we can go from that model to something a little bit more bullish, where there's 2 or 3 days on site where we send people and we do a project. So it really is all about what the companies are able to allocate in a budgetary sense. But we're very cognizant of companies not wanting to spend a lot of money up front until they've actually had a try of this. So I think they'd be surprised once we start talking to them.
Okay, great, thank you. So this is one about the size of companies. Many small companies have issues and could really use this type of product and service. Can smaller companies benefit, or is this just for bigger companies with bigger budgets?
I guess for me personally, and I know the team at Cardinus are the same, sometimes the small to medium-sized businesses, the impact can be significant. And so we've done the same, where we make sure that we make this for a business. Our smallest client has 15 or 18 operators in the field, and that's it. And then some office staff, and they are locked in with us for a few years. So it can go from that to being a multinational across different jurisdictions or continents. No, it's again, if we're going to close our eyes to this and just say this is the price and this is the model and there's no flexibility in that, then we're not going to be able to appeal to small. But we've done the opposite to that. So,
yeah, we've recently just done a one-day project in a care home with I think it was about 25 job tasks and about 40 individuals, and we covered that off in a day. I think it was another half day to deliver the reports back. So it's a low cost solution for an organisation that was suffering, in lots of manual handling related, patient handling related issues, and they're already starting to change some of their tasks and also fitting people to the best jobs because of some of the pre-existing issues. They've even got a morning exercise regime, I know, in place now. So
great, thank you for that, Andy. So next question. This looks perfect for manufacturing, but do these technologies suit more mobile and remote businesses?
good question. The logical piece is, if you're in a very systematic organization like manufacturing, even logistics and warehousing, where people do the same task all the time, that actually becomes very logical that you could use technology. But because of the way everything's going now with AI and camera technology and so forth, you can actually do assessments and you can actually organize analysis for people that work in remote locations or that do work that's more dynamic. So we've done a lot of work in logging, and logging is not very process orientated and has huge variables in environment and weather and so forth. So no, again, it's just about having a lens to what's provided. So I would not limit myself to thinking it's only for a very pragmatic sort of manufacturing environment at all.
yeah, I think we're doing a piece of work for a Californian utility, which has a lot of people traveling all over, sorting out, digging up cables, and actually suits their approach. They were using a single technology, which ended up not being used because it just wasn't delivering. They needed more than that, and they needed someone to actually analyze the data. So I think, yeah, the mobile approach, the construction sites, the utility workers, it has a huge benefit to.
Great, thank you both. So the next one is about industries. What sort of industries? I can't get my words out. Industries use Cardinus and Longitude 6.
Andy will have a view on this, and I do. You go, Andy. You go first.
Yeah, I mean, literally name an industry, and the solutions are being from construction to manufacturing to haulage, logistics. So we're starting to see one or two of the technologies. Certainly motion capture technologies can be used in an office hybrid working laboratory space. I don't think there's an industry sector, professional sector, that you couldn't actually get some benefit. I think obviously the heavier the industry, the bigger the manual handling exposures, the bigger the return on investment. But there's an awful lot of people suffering lower back issues from working from home these days. So I think there's potential. It's just the right technology. I'm sure Mark will say it's if there's no single technology that's the right technology for a particular working environment.
And I think for me, and I agree with everything Andy said, I think for me, we've got a huge uptake in Australia, particularly around aged care and healthcare hospitals. So patient handling, housekeeping and so forth. So to go to Andy's point, from manufacturing to the more physical works, emergency services, and then going into the more sort of office environment or into aged care and so on. It really has, we haven't come across someone that we can't really work with, but we have to be a bit lateral as they do, but they know their world. It's just about us helping to align the technology to the world of that organization. So,
great, thank you. What if we are using another technology? Can you still help us?
No. So look, we have technologies that we put a lot of effort into and a lot of professional skill into finding and validating and working with. We've got a couple of suppliers that keep iterating. So for us, that's exciting. But we also have clients that already use other technologies that are not part of what we think we like to use, but we can still work with that because every technology has a data output, and it's up to us to work out how to aggregate that information. We're not in the business of telling people to break relationships, but we will look at the data that comes out and try and look at how to support that for the end game. So no, we've got a number of clients that have got other technologies, and we embrace that. We just got to work out how to make that talk properly to their need. So.
Great, thank you, Mark. And the next question is an important one in today's economic climate. How do we protect ourselves from buying into a technology that is outdated in 1 to 2 years?
Sounds like a real sales line. Use Longitude and Cardinus because we'll keep bringing what's good for you, and we'll work out ways so you can move from one tech to another. Or when you do sign up with the technology, make them short-term assignments. Don't go buying something for multiple years and necessarily, unless you're very confident of the support you're going to get. And I would definitely try something before you necessarily lock into a big contract. And look, would add a statement on technologies that are out there, because nearly every technology out there is good. They all have a specific use case. Just understand what their output is. Don't get confused by the output that's maybe you assume that they can do. So I think that's a big part of it, because
I think Mark, sorry, I was going to say that no, we also work with occupational health, physical therapists, ergonomists, consultancies, insurance companies who've got risk management teams, and a lot of these organizations will buy the equipment because they see it as part of their solution, and they'll use it as a consultancy service. So you're not having to own the technologies. You're in effect renting the technologies as part of a project. That's what a lot of what we're seeing is, that organizations don't want to own that bit of kit because they see it as potentially being throwaway. But we're now at a situation where we're renting the equipment for a project period, and the next time we may do the project, Mark may be bringing a new technology to the table, and it's a different technology we're using because it's been upgraded, updated, and I think that leasing sort of concept that's emerging, in the way we buy cars these days and so on. So I think that may be something to consider. Don't buy the kit. Just rent the kit for the period of time, and say that there's lots of organisations that have got different types of kit. We've got organisations that have in effect purchased that as part of their solution. So that may be something, Mark, that is starting to. You're probably seeing in the days of, I'm going to buy that bit of wearable, and we've had one client telling us they bought wearables 2 years ago. One, they don't work anymore, and two, they're not actually delivering what they thought, and that was hundreds of thousands of dollars in investment that has been written off in effect.
Yeah, and we definitely see that as well. Clients that have purchased before and are a bit reluctant to, so they will look at that. One of our largest clients is an insurer, a large insurer in the US, and they, typical to what Andy said, they have not bought technology. They've engaged us for a number of years to bring technology to them. And so they're open to whatever we find and we use in analysis projects, but they don't want to know about the actual technology. They just want the output. So I think that's a good way to get around that emerging dilemma.
Yeah, so some larger companies, it probably will be for the larger companies in the UK, probably worth talking to your insurance broker, insurance company, because there are some of those organisations vested in partnerships with us and Longitude, but with other organisations as well, where you may be able to get some free use of these technologies, particularly if you've got employers' liability claims that are hurting you and the insurer. They might actually give you some bursary back, so it's always worth asking. But that, to be honest, will be for the mid to upper end of the commercial sector.
Great advice, thank you. So we're coming up to the last question. So if anyone has any more questions, now's your chance to pop them in the Q&A section or pop them in the chat, whichever works for you. So the last question is, what is the benefit to using both Cardinus and Longitude 6? Can we have all the data and findings integrated with Cardinus?
We are currently working on bringing any data that any solution from our office and hybrid working solution linked back into any other data that these technologies can deliver to create the single dashboard. And our aim is by probably the middle of next year is that you'll be able to look at any data from any bit of technology API'd into a single dashboard to look at people, tasks, jobs, other entities of an organization. So you can look at that in the round in a single database with the reportability back to it. That's a project that we're working with Mark very closely on. The key is that making sure that whatever those technologies that are brought to the table have got the capability of sucking and pulling data out and putting it into meaningful reporting that will allow a client to then take those interventions. Whatever those, whether it's working with a manual handling training expert like Pristine Condition, or with an ergonomist or a physiotherapist, whatever those issues are to change it, or to human factors design consultancy to design a new process. We want to be able to deliver data into a single format, and that's a big task that we're working on. We're making some good progress. But Mark keeps bringing new technologies with new capabilities. Mark, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, it's not all my fault, even though you put it that way. But to be honest, the other piece about the two organisations working together is you've got an organisation that has a DNA and a high sophistication around office ergonomic and risk overall, like with a whole host of products and services from Cardinus. And then you've got an organisation that has probably specialised in a certain lens with the thing, and also has a strong DNA in the industrial element. So most clients have both industrial components to their business and office. So, and then you've got the Cardinus footprint, which is obviously wonderful for us. So I think all in all, the combination of the two companies provides a lot of expertise, but a lot of capability. So,
Great, thank you. We have had one more question in. From experience, are businesses embracing the opportunities of information that sensors and how AI can provide on assessing workplace risks? I'm not sure I've read that correctly, but from experience, are businesses embracing opportunities of information that sensors and now AI can provide on assessing workplace risks? I think that sounds better.
I think it's a really clever question, because I think it's a journey. I think everyone has a sense that this is where to go, but I'm not sure every company yet knows how to translate that to an actual outcome on the ground. And I think that's the piece that we're working hard to do, because little wins will make a big difference. I don't think, if you're looking for a Hail Mary, American term, but if you're looking for technology to make a seismic change to your organization overnight, that's not going to happen. So I think, yes, there are some real leaders that are grabbing technology outputs and making changes. And but they're becoming, there's more of them now than there was a few years ago. So I think as tech gets better, people will get braver. But it's not overnight. I mean, some companies just don't go there, and some people are not yet confident to use that as opposed to traditional ways, but it is changing. Yes.
I think the other thing to get across is that the technology is the technology. The data is the data. Unless you do something with it, and we saw this in the world of telematics in vehicles. Just putting a clever device in the vehicle doesn't stop the driver. Eventually, he'll revert to type and carry on. You need to make interventions. You need to focus on what the individual is doing, or change the process, change the equipment, and do something with the data. Data itself is just data. It's meaningless. So I think it's that combination of the technology, analyzing the data, and then doing something. It's the interventions that will ultimately feed back in and make those returns on investments and lower the pain and discomfort, the costs, and all those associated things. So you can't just assume the technology because I've got it in the factory. Someone's taken over my closed circuit TV and watching me through AI and highlighting near misses and accidents and so on. All that's great technology, fantastic to watch, but unless someone does something with it, you don't get a result. And I think that this is enabling experts. This is enabling good people to do good things, to change things and change behaviours and change approaches and systems.
Great, thank you both. Andy, any closing comments from you before I draw today's webinar to a close?
Just say if anybody's interested in having a deeper dive, Mark's always happy to get up late at night, early morning in his hometown in Melbourne. He's over in the UK quite frequently. We've got a team of people that can explain this. So please do contact us. So we can happily do online demos, come and talk a bit more detail in a live environment, bring the kit along to show some of the things that it can do. We've got plenty of example reports that we can show. So there's a lot of information we provide. But if you just want to just talk about the types of solutions you may be thinking of investing in, then I'm sure Mark is very happy to have that type of, if you're kind of making a decision that you're going to buy a bit of kit, have a chat with Mark beforehand. I'm sure he'll be happy to do that as well. But we're open to, say, short-term pilots, demos, whatever. Mark's been in this marketplace really from when it first started. He was one of the pioneers of sensor technology in the industrial space, moving away from, say, that sporting environment where it sort of started from for Mark for the last 10, 12 years. And prior to that, it's got expertise in physiotherapy and the human anatomy and so on. So he's an absolute expert in this space. But thank you very much for those of you that joined us this morning. I hope it was a useful, albeit whistle-stop tour through this space. Technology are here to stay, but it's all about the data, it's all about the people. But thank you, Julie, thank you, WRSN, and thank you, Mark.
Great, thank you for that. Thank you both Andy and Mark for an excellent presentation today. Just to remind everyone that the recording will be uploaded onto the WRSN member hub in the next day or two. So that just leaves me to say goodbye to everyone. I hope you enjoyed today's webinar.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.